Thank you, Paula. Your music's fantastic. So, welcome. Welcome, I'm Alan Johnson. I'm part of the Interfaith Network on Mental Illness that is hosting this event today. And on this gorgeous fall day, we are so glad you are inside here. I know, it's very hard, all those trees are turning color and all that stuff, but we are here because it's a very important issue that we're here to talk about. I want to just, quick announcements actually. I want to let you know that our sponsors are Hope Coalition of Boulder County. I want to raise your hand. Boulder, there's Catherine back there, Hope Coalition. The First Congregational Church in Boulder, in the back as well. And also this church, Atonement Church. We have some members from the team here. It's fantastic. And our partners here are Out Boulder and Police Closet and Rise Against Suicide and NAMI Boulder County. So we're so glad that all these groups are here represented and be part of this afternoon. I would like to ask the lead pastor of this church, Pastor Chad Holmeyer, to come forward and to bring his greeting from on behalf of the congregation. Pastor Chad.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's a gift to be gathered together. Welcome to Atonement. Sort of an interfaith word, actually. We just finished Yom Kippur, our Jewish brothers and sisters. And here at Atonement, it's a bit of a heavy word, but I like to break it out. At one meant. And so in an interfaith gathering and conversation, I pray that you feel connection with the divine here, that you feel at one, connected to the divine. We're so grateful to have this space shared with you today. Our vision statement here is to be a welcoming and inclusive Christian community, fostering connection to God, one another, and the world. So pray you feel welcome and included and connected to both community, to the world, and also to the divine. On a more practical nature, if you haven't found the restrooms yet, if you see the painting in the back there with the waves behind it, if you go to the right of that and then take a right, there's a gender neutral restroom there off to the right. And if you go down a little further, there's other restrooms down there to take care of those needs at our breaks. Otherwise, welcome, and it is a gift to be together today.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Chad. That's great. We also have two counselors that are here this afternoon, and they will be available to have conversation if anybody wants to have a conversation and things that come up. Because there are some difficult things that we talk about, issues and topics around mental health issues and concerns. And we do have two counselors here. Dr. Christine Hibbert, would you raise your hand or let us know where you are? Right here. And also Dr. Jed Shapiro. These two are here. You can see on the program, their telephone numbers are there, and you can just text them anytime during this time. And there's some spaces that are set aside that you can meet them for private conversation. Just want to make sure that everyone is feeling safe and secure, and we're just glad that you are here as you are. So as we begin on this program, I'm going to ask Jackie Hibbert to come forward to help us be here now, I think.
That's exactly what we're going to do. So just really quickly before we get started, I invite you to put your feet on the floor. Really feel them. You're all seated, so feel your seat. Feel your sit bones. And if it feels okay, go ahead and close your eyes. And if it doesn't, just gaze softly on the floor in front of you or at the back of the head of the person in front of you. And bring your attention to your breath. Just notice your breath. Whether it's shallow or deep matters little than simply noticing. Notice all the sensations in your body. Notice if you're holding tension somewhere. Notice if your head is full. Notice if you've got worries running. Notice if your heart is open. And maybe take in a deep breath, and as you let out, maybe loosen a little bit more. Allow yourself to be a little bit more present. I love seeing those yawns. Yeah, just allow yourself to be here. And if during the presentations, if something comes up, you need to talk, got Jed and Christine here, but you always have this breath, bringing your awareness back to your breath. Let it come in and out. Make sure your feet are on the floor, knowing that you're here, that you're safe. You got lots of people here who love and support you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open up your eyes. He told me to keep it short and sweet, so I did. And then I surprised him, because I did it.
I was in deep meditation right there. It's great. So there's one of the quotes that has really meant a lot to me, and it's from James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And I feel that at least the In Me board wanted to have this program because we really want to face things as they are. And being as they are, we then can figure ways to respond, engage, find resources and support. So we know that the U.S. Surgeon General from the United States had issued a general statement indicating that we need to address the nation's youth mental health crisis. And hearing that from that level in the government, we really wanted to respond and engage. So we want to have things that are faced, not hidden. Things that we want to be spoken out loud, not to be silent about, which is why the title of our gathering here today is Breaking the Silence. And I hope in being able to find your voice and ways that you might want to speak, or also to remember, be open in your own heart to hear what people are saying as well. So there are so many more people in our hearts and minds than those that are here today. And if you're here because of yourself, or maybe a family member, or a friend, or a neighbor, or a schoolmate, a neighbor, if you're willing, I would invite you to raise your hand if indeed you are a person who has somehow or known someone who is impacted by mental health concerns. Now just look around just a minute. And we hold our hand up in that way. We're really saying that, we are not alone. And that is something that I need to know for myself and my own family situations that has dealt with mental illness, serious mental illness for over 35 years. And it's been difficult through all those years to find a place where it can be heard, where it can be shared. And so that's one of the things that I think as we kind of looked around, we're all in this together. And I hope that today each of us will receive or will offer at least one thing that will give you courage and hope as we address the crisis which is affecting all of us. Now, some of you might know the history and some might not, but we began thinking about this event many, many months ago, and we're hoping to have Sarah Lund come here from Indianapolis to speak. She's the one who wrote the book, Blessed Youth, Breaking the Silence on Mental Illness with Teens and Youth. However, she had surgery, and that surgery put her in medical leave, and so therefore she is not here with us in person, but she is here on the screen. So we have a pre-recorded session that she is going to share, and right after the presentation by Sarah, we're then going to have a panel conversation. So sit back, relax, be here, and listen to and hear from Sarah Lund.
Hi, I'm Sarah Griffith Lund, author of Blessed Youth, Breaking the Silence about Mental Illness with Children and Teens. Along with Blessed Youth, we created the Blessed Youth Survival Guide. These resources are available for you and your communities to help break the silence, to help end the stigma, to help reduce the shame associated with mental health challenges. In my own story of my own family, mental illness has been a part of several generations, going back to my father's untreated bipolar disorder, my brother's bipolar disorder, and others younger than myself and the next generation newly diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder. There also in my family are generations of people who have felt feelings of despair and had thoughts of suicide. And so today I am so grateful that our communities are coming together to help share hope and healing. We know that no one is untouched by the challenges of mental illness. Mental health challenges are part of what it means to be human. And along the spectrum of mental wellness, any one of us on any given day can be feeling well or unwell. And sometimes those feelings of unwellness last a long time. And sometimes we need help. We need help from care providers, from pastors and counselors, from psychiatrists, from nurses, from our faith communities, from our parents and grandparents, neighbors and friends, aunts and uncles. We live in a time where the mental health crisis is at an all-time high. The U.S. Surgeon General sent out an alert saying that now is the time to pay attention to the youngest among us, to our children, to our teenagers, to our young adults. And so that is why we are here. We are here because we know that we were called into leadership and called into community for such a time as this. My own story includes a brother who has lived with suicidal ideation his whole adult life, starting as a teenager. I'm happy to share with you that through his own hard work of recovery, through the support of family and friends and AA groups, through help of therapists and medications, through inpatient and outpatient, my brother now is 50 years old and is doing well. He has overcome these challenges through the support of community. Community is a place where we can turn to without shame and fear, and to be vulnerable and to let others know that we need help. And community is a place that can surround people with unconditional love, without judgment or blame. Sometimes mental illness, because it can be seen as invisible, is easy to hide. It's easy to wear behind a mask. And a lot of us, including myself, are well practiced at hiding behind a mask. Yet today, one of the most powerful things we can do to support children and youth mental health is to be vulnerable ourselves, to be authentic ourselves, to take care of our own mental health as adults. And then we will be better equipped to help the most vulnerable among us. I'm celebrating my brother's well-being and all the ways that he has come through the deepest valleys of the shadows of suicidal thinking. Yet I am also here as a suicide loss survivor. My niece Sydney died by suicide November 2nd, 2020. And so I want to take a moment to recognize that many of us are suicide loss survivors. And there's not always a place to share that. But the pain is real, and there are many, many families and communities impacted by suicide loss. Unfortunately, the number of survivors are growing as more and more people take this despair that overwhelms them and die by suicide. And so one thing that we can do as a community is be intentional about suicide prevention and share with each other resources and what makes a person at risk, what are warning signs, so that we can be sure that we've done everything within our human power to help save lives of people we love and value, and to help convey that everyone's life has value and worth, no matter what. My niece Sydney was only 16 when she died by suicide, and unfortunately, under the radar is how I would describe a lot of her symptoms, that she, for whatever reasons we don't know, did not feel comfortable sharing with family members about how deeply in despair she found herself. Out of my own grieving of her loss and death, I felt called to break the silence about suicide, especially among children and teens. And so I wrote Blessed Youth as a love letter to my niece, and as a love letter to myself, realizing that I too have had moments of deep despair where it seemed so hard to hold on. And so there is hope when we share these stories. And when we share these stories in communities of care and compassion and resources. So this is one more resource for communities, and it calls upon all of us to come together despite our differences. So I call on families, schools, faith communities, and mental health care professionals. Also important to me is that we value diversity, realizing that different cultures have different stigmas and stereotypes and different challenges to breaking the silence and getting the mental health care they need. Also, I highlight that one of the most high-risk populations for suicide are the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning youth. Still today, there's far too much discrimination and even homophobia and transphobia. And it's impacting in a very negative way children and teens. And so we are, as adults, responsible for setting the tone, for creating communities of radical belonging. And a lot of times folks have been so deeply wounded and harmed, there is trauma. And so this is true in spiritual and faith communities. Unfortunately, there are religious communities that speak very harmful words about LGBTQ youth. And so I acknowledge, as a religious leader myself and as a pastor, that part of my role in community is to offer healing, affirmation, and unconditional love for LGBTQ youth. That having these communities that are affirming, opening, and welcoming is suicide prevention. And so I am happy to share in my book resources from the Trevor Project, who has an outreach and a heart for LGBTQ youth. In addition to Blessed Youth, there is a survival guide, and this was inspired by my niece, Sydney. Before she died in the spring, she worked on a school project, and it was an invitation to create a nonprofit. And her nonprofit was called Sentimental. It was her vision to provide mental health education in the classroom. Her idea was very simple and affordable, and it was brilliant. It was basically a PowerPoint presentation to give students basic mental health 101. And her biggest hope was that it would end the stigma and shame about very common mental health challenges, anxiety and depression, PTSD, eating disorders, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And so I dedicate this survival guide to Sydney. In addition to sharing basic, understandings of common mental health challenges, there is a pledge. And the pledge is a place for our youth to reflect upon their commitment that whenever they are experiencing thoughts of self-harm or suicide, that they make a commitment to themselves that they will tell 3 trusted adults. And so it invites them to think about who would be these 3 people, write their names down, and then sign their name as a pledge that whenever they're having these thoughts, they would contact their 3 safeties. There's also a place for those names to be written down and cell phone numbers. And so this safety pledge, I believe, has the potential to save lives. It can be done as a group activity at school or in a youth group or any other community group working with youth. In addition to that, there's a place in the survival guide to make their own mental health toolkit to locate in their community who are the mental health care providers, what, if any, insurance might provide their mental health care, who is their school social worker or school nurse, so that teens will know, right, in this little pocket-sized book, all the resources that they need. There's also encouraging words from scripture that I have interpreted to provide people some hope. And there's a place to doodle, encouraging people to make that mind, body, spirit connection. For example, doodle a picture of your anxiety. What shapes, textures, or colors do you feel in your body? I believe that this is a simple resource that gets the conversation started. So when we try to plan out, these opportunities to break the silence, this survival guide is one way that you can do that. Chalice Press, the publisher, has committed to giving away 1 free copy of the survival guide with every purchased copy of Blessed Youth. And they are excited to get this resources out into the community. So if you would like donations of the survival guide to your community, please be in touch with me directly, and I will do everything that I can to make sure you get resources that can help you save lives. The mental health crisis facing our children and teens is overwhelming. And so one way that I encourage myself and others is to discern within yourself, what is the one thing that you can do that will make a positive impact in your community? Because if each one of us have that one key thing and we come together, we can make a big difference. I have so much hope in our future because teens and children today are more open than my generation and the generation before mine. There is less stigma, and this is something to celebrate. Yet the work continues. And so my wish for all of you is that this might be a time of deep connection, of deep listening, and of deep compassion, and that together we can surround our children and youth with support, unconditional love, and compassion. I know that the true leadership of this movement is with our youth. And so I also wish today that our youth who are present will feel emboldened and empowered to be fully who they are in all their brilliance and beauty, knowing that they are alive for such a time as this and that they have our 100% support. Thank you so much for supporting me in my journey, in my own lived experiences of mental health challenge, And know that you are not alone. We are not alone. We are here to companion one another. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, and I hope to stay in touch. Feel free to reach out to me. My website is sarahgriffithlund.com, and my email is sarahgriffithlund@gmail.com. May you be filled with hope and healing. May you and your whole communities be blessed.
I've had a chance to meet Sarah for the last 15 years. She always just touches me because of her honesty and directness. I invite the moderator and the panel members to come up here at their time. And now I have a chance to introduce Jackie Hibbard, who is the moderator for the panel. Jackie is the associate pastor at Community United Church of Christ here in Boulder, is also the owner and coach of Dancing Spirit Equine Facilitated Learning and Coaching Center. And she volunteers with the Wide Spaces Community Initiative in Lyons. Jackie lives in the foothills of Lyons with her wife, dog, cats, chickens, and horses.
And my pronouns are she and her. So before I get started, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to go down the line, even though it's not in the order my paper is, but I know them all now. So first on the end, we have Jenna Clinchard, who is the executive director of Rise Against Suicide since 2019. And she's very shy about talking about herself, but I would like to highlight that if you've heard the interview on KGNU this past week with Sarah, it was also with Jenna. And if you haven't heard it yet, it's a really beautiful interview and conversation about youth and mental health, and I highly recommend it. Jenna. And then we have Ben Knighton, who is he, him, and school psychologist with St. Vrain Valley School Districts. And for over 15 years, he has been in public education and works to advocate for student mental health. And he works in 2 different schools each week. So Ben. And then we have Emma Kong, she, them pronouns. And they attend Monarch High School and is an intern for Out Boulder County. And this year helped organize the QTPOC Youth Community Retreat, which was a big deal. So thank you, Emma. And then we have Vanessa Longer from Colley's Closet, she, her pronouns. And she's a senior at Centaurus High School and is a member of Colley's Closet for the last 3 years. She's on the leadership team and the board of directors. So we have quite a nice panel today. And we all had a chance to see the video before today. So we had a little bit of a heads up about what Sarah was going to offer. And maybe to start, whoever wants to, no pressure, Vanessa, since you have the mic, we have to pass the mic around, but what did you hear in the video from Sarah that you would like to highlight from your own experience working in the community in the ways that you do? So whoever wants to start.
I mean, I can, start off just since I have the microphone thing. I thought it was really, really amazing that Sarah's, was it her niece, had that vision of Sentimental, that, organization that could help educate youth on mental health and, raise some of the stigma surrounding those topics. And it just really stood out to me that, that is one of our main missions at Colley's Closet, that we, visit we visit middle and high schools, and we work to educate students, and to remove that stigma. And our main goal is to make talking about the subjects of mental health just more easy. And, we like to perhaps share our own personal stories in classrooms and just help children to understand that they aren't alone, to help teens understand that, we're all going through this together. And I think it's so amazing that, especially, in these recent times where we've had COVID, and we've had fires, and we've had hurricanes, and there's just so much that's, been happening, that we can come together as a community, and especially, to get youth who are so impacted and who are so instrumental too in spreading that education, to get youth to become a part of it. So I think it's really amazing.
Oh wow. Sorry. I was just hinting this. That's crazy. It's fine. So I really appreciate that we're still doing this sort of work to kind of destigmatize mental health problems, especially since sort of after COVID, people thought that like our mental health issues would be a little bit less intense, even though they still are here, they're still present, and they're still pretty intense. And I appreciate that we're still doing this work to make sure that the people are okay, because even before COVID, we've all been struggling, and we've all sort of had this, these issues. We've always had ADHD, we've always had depression, anxiety, all that stuff, and I'm just happy that this work is being done.
I think for me on the video, the part that stuck out was the story about her niece. And one of the schools that I worked at, we had a student suicide just this last school year. And it was a student who I worked pretty closely with. And so I related to that sense of loss, I think, that she was talking about on the video. But in my just day-to-day, everyday life at work, mental health comes up all the time. And I've definitely seen the need, grow exponentially with COVID and the years that have passed since it started. But I was looking through I was kind of thumbing through the survival guide, and one thing that I think is really important is convincing state and local leaders of the importance of education and advocacy around mental health, because I know what it should look like in schools, but I also see how far we have to go in terms of resources and just the importance that people in charge see it as. And so looking through that letter that was like in the back of the survival guide about advocating with local leaders around school funding and just prioritizing mental health in schools really stood out to me. So that's, I hope we can continue that work forward and work on advocating for our students. So.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you to everyone for being here today. Thanks for taking the time out. Thank you to the adults for being here to learn, and thank you so much. I love to see the youth faces here. I think, when I hear her speak, and from my own experience, it's about talking about mental health, being willing to talk about where we're at, and knowing that we don't have to feel ashamed as humans for not feeling good all the time, and for being willing to share that with a trusted adult, with a friend, but knowing that we don't have to keep it inside, and we don't have to fight this battle alone. Depression and mental challenges can make us feel so alone sometimes, and so separated from everyone. And in today's society, we look at social media, right? And I always tell my own kids, I said, we can't compare other people's outsides with our insides. We don't know how they feel on the inside. All we see is that picture that they're giving us on the outside. And so talking about that, right? And remembering that we're not alone and we don't have to be alone. And I really liked what she said about having the 3 trusted adults. And I would take that a step further. If we don't have 3 trusted adults, do we have a friend that we can talk to? Do we have a friend's parent that we can talk to, right? But really, I think that list, the most important thing is that it's 3 trusted people that we can go to when we're not feeling well.
Beautiful. You can keep the mic for a second.
Okay.
You might want to go first.
Okay.
I love part of what you all mentioned and what Sarah mentioned, and I'm going to be a little selfish. I sat with 2 people this week, one of whom lost her son to suicide, and one whose granddaughter attempted. And what they both said to me was, I tried to have a conversation, but it didn't land or it didn't work. And I wonder, from your experience or however you want to answer this, what advice might you have to our youth? Because I love whatever youth group just showed up today. I love that you're here, and we have some others as well. But what advice do you have for youth on how to actually have that conversation? And what advice do you have for the adults in the room, whether we're parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, faith leaders? How do we start the conversation and create a safe space? Whoever wants to start, no pressure. Jenna.
Thank you. So that's difficult.
I know.
And first and foremost, what our organization does is we work with youth that are struggling with suicidal ideation. And so most importantly, if we're with someone and we think that they want to die by suicide, we ask them, and we are that direct. Are you feeling so low that you want to die by suicide, or you want to hurt yourself? And that is one of the hardest questions.
Absolutely.
As a parent to ask a child, as a friend to ask another friend, because it's not only vulnerable for them, but it's vulnerable for you, right?
Yes.
But could be one of the most important questions you ask.
You might save a life.
Yes, you might. And in terms of communicating, I can speak from my own experience as a parent. If I feel like my child or loved one can't talk to me, it's asking them if they'd be willing to talk with someone else. And let them know it's okay if they don't want to talk to me. That's all right. I may not be that person for them, but asking them if they'd be willing to let me help them find a person that they could talk to and they may feel comfortable with.
A big thing for mental health struggles and talking to other people about it is making sure that the youth and generally people who are struggling with mental health is that you make sure that they know that their feelings are valid and that they're in a safe space. Because I remember when I was younger, I would cry a lot. I was emotional. And my dad would say, "Why are you crying? Nothing bad is happening. It's over." And that just impacts someone a lot, because being told that you shouldn't cry because something is over really prevents you from being able to process that, because somebody's telling you you can't process that, you can't cry because it's over, it's fine. It's not fine, you're struggling. And just being able to have somebody who validates your emotions is very important, especially if you want to have those difficult, sensitive, vulnerable conversations like, do you have suicidal ideation? Because if somebody asks that question to you and you don't feel comfortable responding genuinely, that's a big part of this conversation.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think just making, conversations about not only the negative aspects of mental health, but just mental health in general and emotions in general, just more commonplace. Because, I do a lot of babysitting, and this isn't teenagers, but I work with a couple of families, and especially one that I can think of where they really encourage their children to talk to them about their emotions. They have board games, they have Jenga, and on each little piece is, a different emotion that you pull up the piece and you talk about it. And I think, just to make those conversations really easy, so that way, not only when it's a negative thing, but just in general, to check in about mental health and how are you feeling today. And, I think that a lot of the time, we don't take mental health as seriously until it becomes an issue of physical health, until there's negative coping mechanisms or self-harm, or there are attempts to die by suicide. And I think a lot of the time, until we get to that point, it's just, you're fine, you're okay, you're just a little bit sad, you can brush it off, and just to really make those conversations commonplace and to make it much easier to have those conversations as often as possible. Not only just when somebody's feeling down or sad, but just always, every day, how are you doing today? And it's okay to not be okay, it's okay to be great, but just to make, you know, however you might be feeling, normal.
Just to add to that a little bit, in my work with students, I have found that that direct questioning that you were talking about is really important. It can be, you know, you can kind of avoid the direct question by asking other types of things. And sometimes it's easy, I think, for youth who are in crisis to kind of evade talking about it if you're not direct about it. The other piece, I think, for parents or teachers or caregivers is to be aware of maybe other signs that a student is or a child is considering suicide. You know, have they withdrawn into themselves? Do you see a sudden change in like their academic performance compared to, you know, how they were beforehand? Do you see that they're losing interest in some of those everyday activities? Because I think when you start to see some of those signs, you can know that it's important to take that direct approach with someone who's comfortable with them and to have that conversation, even though it's hard.
Yeah, and I really appreciate Vanessa bringing up how important it is to name our emotions and feelings, because we don't often as a culture take time to do that. And boy, I love the creativity of putting emotions on a Jenga piece. I mean, it's so cool. So yeah, I love that idea. And one of the other things that Sarah highlighted was the importance of community. And here we have the community gathered and lots of really great community organizations. But I wonder, kind of going on the creativity bandwagon, what does it or what could it look like if we really had a community that came together to support our youth, whether we're living with a particular mental health challenge or just really wanting to normalize that we all have feelings and emotions? What might it look like, or what could it look like? What would be possible to have the community come together, which is part of what Sarah's invitation is. It's like we have families, faith communities, schools, community organizations. What might it look like?
I've thought a lot about what it might look like at schools.
Yes.
And I don't think we're even kind of close to that yet. But what I would see really helping a lot in every school is to have an equal importance around education of mental health topics as there is for math and reading and you know, all the other core subjects that students have to be a part of. If there was you know, kind of a universal curriculum that was well established and meaningful for kids, I think teaching them about you know, what is depression, what is anxiety, how common is it? Let's talk about you know, the different feelings that we have every day and why all of those are okay. And what coping skills do you use when you're struggling with different types of things? And it just seems like something that is often reactive to a situation, where if we're promoting that as one of the most important things that kids learn, even starting in elementary school, I think that would have a huge impact on the sense of, one, community students feel at school, and two, just the stigma. I think that would help with reducing that.
I'm gonna piggyback off Ben. I've thought about it a lot too, and I do think about the schools. And where I think about the schools is I think we need to start the education in elementary schools. I think we're waiting too long to start talking with our kids about it. And then the kids can come home and integrate that into the households. That's a lot of what we see sometimes in schools. Because what I think about is, you know, kids learn, you all learn in school, if you have a cough or you have a fever 100.4 or more, go to the nurse and you're going to be seen for that, right? Like, how do we start this exact same conversation around mental health? The difference is mental health is not tangible, right? So how do we start bringing that conversation into health classes or just in classes in general? I too would love to see a full class on that, but we're far away from that. But I think we can start to bring that community together. And I think it's about separating, like not separating communities around mental health anymore either. Like not separating faith communities from non-faith
Yes.
communities, right? How are we all just one? The truth is, every single one of us sitting here, we're human, period. No matter what we believe or we don't believe, or where we think we quote fit and where we don't fit, all of us fit because we're human. And so us as a mental health, as mental health people, even helping to stop that split, right? And so I guess that's where I'm at.
Beautiful.
Another thing for kind of going back to the schools is having all these things be normalized, especially being LGBTQ plus, being disabled. Because in my school, Monarch High School, I have these large banners on the walls of our hallway that says, discrimination will not be tolerated. People of all colors, races, disabilities are welcome here. And that helps out a lot for making people feel welcome in a school, because I know that going to school, I feel a lot of social anxiety. I ask, will I be accepted? Will I get bullied here? If I do get bullied, will I be able to talk to somebody about it and get some help? And honestly, having these banners, having these "this is a safe place" posters in my school helps me to feel a lot more comfortable in this community, in this school, with all these other people.
I mean, I think going along with that is more of the school stuff, because being a student, having had struggles with my own mental health and with depression, and I was at a point in my, I believe, like sophomore, junior year of high school, where I went from, being a straight A student and, going to all my classes and just being very motivated, and I did lose a lot of my motivation, and I couldn't, get it in myself to go to school and to participate, and I just found that, I could do my work, but I just wanted to be home. And I think that, I kind of hit a wall with some of my teachers actually during that time, with, some of the adults in my life, with their understanding of what I was going through. And, especially being a student who typically excels at school, or just being more of a high, just having high expectations for myself and others having high expectations of me. I felt that when I kind of started to falter a little, people had come to expect so much from me that they didn't really understand that I was struggling. And I think that a big piece in schools as well is to educate the adults in schools, because they have, they have a lot more say over things than students do sometimes, and we can influence them to then help us. But I think it's so key to just make sure that, students and educators are on the same page to foster that sense of community, because when you're fighting with, your teachers to just get a day off of school because you don't think that you have it in you to just go to school, that's a point where we really have to consider what we can do to change that, to make it better.
Beautiful. I had the opportunity this summer to work with 2 groups of youth who are grieving. And one of the things that they all talked about was how nobody got it, right? That it wasn't okay to talk about that they lost their parent. Most of them had lost a parent, not to any, various different kinds of illnesses, but how important it was for them to have a place to come where they were understood and they could say, I'm grieving and I'm having a really hard day, and not having anybody judge them. And so part of what I'm hearing you all talk about also is how important that is, to have places where we can talk about whatever we're feeling, and finding new and different ways of coping. And I wonder, what other ways of coping with life, with mental health challenges, have you all found to be helpful in your own journey as adults and as youth? I'd love to hear that. Coping is a big word, and Jenna just brought it up, and I love that. So
I can start if nobody else has anything super pressing. Yeah, well, for me, I think that just talking about it is one of my biggest coping mechanisms, and just to, be able to go anywhere to go to, to be here, and just to be able to talk openly and freely about my struggles, and to be able to listen to other people and just to hear, you know, constantly that I'm not alone, and to have, you know, to be surrounded by people who, if they haven't gone through what I've gone through, that they at least, you know, they know what it feels like, or they're willing to understand, you know, just having people, especially in my life, who are just open to understanding me and to helping me and to doing what they can to you know, work towards just understanding youth mental health as a whole. And I think that, you know, a great coping mechanism in general is just community, and all the communities that I've joined, you know, the work I've done with Coley's Closet, and all the people in Coley's who I've been able to meet. So just, yeah, knowing that we do have people.
Definitely having that sort of validation piece, having like a group of people you can talk to. Another thing is though, if you don't feel comfortable being able to talk about these things to other people, one, make sure that you can, because talking to other people, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it does make your problems feel a lot smaller. I remember I was in middle school, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I didn't feel like I could like talk to them about my struggles because I just wasn't close enough, and I didn't feel like they would validate me. So I wrote poetry, and sure, middle school poetry, not the greatest, but it does help you get your feelings out, because it's incredibly unhealthy to just bottle it all up inside. You're not just gonna be able to contain all this stuff and live with it, because it's exhausting. So having outlets, drawing, vent art, it's great to be able to put your thoughts on paper, even if it's incoherent, and kind of just getting things out of you, being able to not bottle them up is a big part.
Going along with the creativity or art piece, I think music is a big one for me, whether it's listening to it or I write my own songs too, and I find that to be pretty therapeutic when I feel you know, down about something. But one thing that I've found helpful with myself as an adult and with students that I work with is different ideas from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and one particular aspect of that I think is really helpful is looking at what are things that our mind does that are not really based in what's actually happening. So like thinking errors, you know, are we catastrophizing about something that probably isn't likely to happen, and then how much anxiety and pain and suffering does that cause, and helping people realize that that is what it is. It's an error that your brain is causing you to spiral about something. But it's really not based on anything that's actually happening in reality. And helping people see that, I think, can help them can identify when that's happening, and then help them feel better about, you know, just having that thought in the first place and seeing it for what it is.
I love the creative side as well. Journaling, I find journaling helps a lot. And someone once shared with me in my recovery, and when I was in therapy, one of my therapists said, you know, a secret shared is a secret cut in half, and it has a lot less power in our brains when we get it out. And that helped me a lot. And so whether that secret was put on paper, whether I told that secret to someone else, it lost power in my mind. And that's what I needed to do. I needed to let those negative thoughts in my head that weren't telling me the truth, right? I needed to get those out so they didn't get to have that much power. And another thing that's helped me, and it's super hard, it's taken me years to work on, but acceptance of myself and acceptance of who I am, and acceptance of where my life is in the moment. Because one thing I learned is that my life has changed drastically and is so much better than I ever could have imagined when I was 15 years old. And when people told me that, I was like, yeah, well, I can't say it in here, but yeah, you know, I was like, you are so full of it, right? Like, I mean, my life is not going to be better one day, and it's not going to look any different. But, you know, if I could go through just one day and find, if I woke up in the morning and said one thing I was grateful for, and one thing that I could accept about myself in my life, just one thing, it started to shift, and it started to shift my mind. Not everything changed, and not everything changes overnight. And that's okay, but if I can just make little shifts and little changes, they do help.
Healing it is not a straight line.
Yes.
You are going to have, imagine a graph, you have a line, goes up and down. I personally, for a while, I struggled with brushing my teeth because it was just such a terrible, boring task. And sometimes, because I didn't brush my teeth, it hurt. And like, forming habits is a struggle. You have to be able to come back to that. And like, if you don't do that one day, don't beat yourself up about it. Learn to love yourself. Sometimes just being able to like look in the mirror and not start picking yourself apart is very important. It's very important to just learn to treat yourself with more kindness, because you're not some flawless being on that little box of internet that you see. You're flawed, and that is perfectly fine, and you need to learn to accept that. That is a threat.
Can I add one more?
Of course you can.
Thing, but going off of that idea of cognitive behavioral therapy and sort of I wanted to talk about something that sort of helped me, which was, I think one of my main struggles was I was just constantly thinking about like the future, because I'm a senior, I'm working on applying to college, and I'm thinking, I'm applying to college and I'm just doing this work to do more work, to get a job, to do more work, and then what am I going to do, and it's all over, and then and I kind of realized that I was obsessing over things I couldn't change. I was I was trying to change the past, and I was trying to change the future, and I realized that, the only thing I could really change was the present, and that it was, I wanted to be in the present, and I realized that, if I look back on my teenage years and I had spent the whole time worrying about the future and just spiraling down this path of self-hatred and self-doubt, that, I would look back on who I was and I would be upset about it, and I realized, I wanted to live now in the present, and I wanted to change what I could, but I realized that, certain things are out of my control, and certain things happen in life, but, I don't have to take those as bad things. They're not inherently bad. They can be good. And it was just realizing that I had more control over my life and over my emotions and my decisions and my actions than I thought I did. And yeah, to really just stay in the present and focus on what I could do and I could change. And I think that stopped a lot of that, self-doubt and just that negative spiraling, to just focus on here's what's happening now,
That's so great. I want to say thank you to Vanessa and Emma and Ben and Jenna for your time, for sharing your wisdom, for being vulnerable, for being truth tellers, and being advocates in the ways you are for youth mental health. So thank you all very, very much.